to look at today's chemistry paper and see how the questions went, see what was new, the old material that normally comes up, and just have a quick look. Question 1, I suppose, when you first of all look at it, it seems very normal, the usual material coming up with an iodine thiosulfate titration. I suppose the only tricky thing that we had to look at was in section D, where we're reading the concentration of iodine wasn't given in moles per litre, which is usually the case. So students would have had to have taken a breath, realised that, done the conversion into moles per litre, and then continued on as per normal. The good news is that the marks allocated for that calculation wasn't any more than any other year, so overall I wouldn't fret too much about it. Question 2, our new organic chemistry experiment came up. I suppose section A and B, all about that new experiment, observations, knowing the chemicals involved. But the good news again, part C and D, old material, filtration, recrystallization, and doing your calculation of a percentage yield. So all students who would have practiced that over the last 2 years wouldn't have had any issue with that at all. With question 3 on water, considering it's so topical in the news at the moment, looking at swimming pool water, the various different substances you find in it, the dissolved, suspended solids, hardness and chlorine, they're just asking you to analyse data from a table. So I suppose it veers away from the rote learning of experiments, and you had to actually read the data, but when you read the questions again and take a deep breath, you'll realise that it wasn't that difficult after all. In terms of section A, a bit trickier maybe than previous years, but not too bad overall. So moving on to section B, question 4, your short questions, very, very doable. Should have been happy with that one. Question 5, I suppose, was a bit scary to look at initially. All your different scientists, they had Crookes in there, they had Rutherford, Niels Bohr, the usual emission spectrum making an appearance. So anybody had learned their emission spectrum, you've got 12 marks in the bag already. When you read the question, the answers aren't that long, do you know what I mean, that they're looking for. So they're asking for names of scientists, they're asking you for 1 sentence, 2 sentence answers. So, I wouldn't worry too much if you felt that you didn't write an awful lot on that, you probably would have hit the nail on the head. Organic, again, all as per usual, big, section of the course. You had your organic experiment, as we talked about in question 2, question 6 and question 8 and part A of question 10, all organic. Apart from, we'll say, question 10A, where they were talking about the bonding in benzene, question 6 and 8, very straightforward, your Hess's law, heat change calculation, with Kekulé being mentioned, a scientist that was involved in putting together the idea of benzene in a ring structure. He made an appearance, but really what they're looking for was in the diagram for benzene that they gave you with the double and single bonds, the idea of the delocalized electrons. So once you had that in your answer, you were going to do fine. A graph, as per usual, but this time not on rates of reaction, this time on a pH curve. So, they gave you all the data, you had to get your graph paper, you had to plot your points, join your curve, and again, something that has been asked several times over the last 12 or 13 years, so shouldn't have been too difficult overall. Lovely stoichiometry question C in part 10 there, very straightforward, use of molar ratios, nothing too exciting or too difficult, I should say. Half a question on equilibrium, half a question on electronegativity and bonding. Very usual, again, in the equilibrium question, given a graph, have to do a little bit of interpretation, as the temperature increases, what's happening to the value of Kc, asking you whether it's endothermic, exothermic, but something that would have been asked, before. So good practice, you'd have had no issue with it whatsoever. Then finally, global warming in your option part of the question, greenhouse gases, and trying to make it topical in terms of how could Ireland reduce its greenhouse emissions, I suppose. So